You're tuned in to More Living with Jim Brogan, broadcast live from the Brogan Financial Studios at News Talk 98.7, where old-fashioned values, expert knowledge, and genuine understanding come together to give you the retirement straight talk you deserve. Jim's a former National Advisor of the Year recipient and a financial educator, and he's here today to talk about how you can live out the best years of your life. Jim and the Brogan Financial team have been helping retirees and pre-retirees across the Southeast for over 20 years in their pursuit of financial independence. You can reach them during the week at 865-862-6800. So sit back, relax, and get ready to learn, because More Living with Jim Brogan starts now.
Good morning, East Tennessee. Welcome to More Living with Jim Brogan, where it's all about living the best years of your life your way. You're listening to News Talk 98.7 WOKI, and I'm excited today to have acclaimed actor, director, producer, musician, and humanitarian Gary Sinise. As you know, on this program, we have been extremely supportive. Have many veterans over the years, many charities and foundations and organizations that serve veterans and first responders. Of course, as you know, Gary won a Golden Globe, a Tony, a Primetime Emmy, and 4 Screen Actors Guild Awards. He's best known for his role as Lieutenant Dan in Forrest Gump, which earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. He turned his passion for those who serve in our military, which he's had a passion for over 40 years, and he turned that into an opportunity to serve them when he established the Gary Sinise Foundation in 2011. Good morning, Gary. Welcome to More Living.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
It's
great to be with you.
Great to have you with us. So I certainly want to get into your incredible foundation. I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about your acting career as well. Was acting something you wanted to always do, Gary, when you were growing up? Tell us how you evolved into that career.
Well, from sophomore year in high school, that's when I got into my first play in high school. And I was kind of a struggling student at the time. I was really not doing well in school, and then all of a sudden I fell into the theater department and fell in love with acting. The musical West Side Story was being done, and I got a little part in it. And all of a sudden I had this whole new group of friends, and I just felt very comfortable in the theater department. I started doing every play I could possibly do throughout high school. And once I graduated from high school, I wanted to continue doing that. I wasn't going to go to college. And I ended up starting a theater company with my friends back in 1974. And that theater company is called Steppenwolf Theater, and it's a giant multi-million-dollar building in Chicago, on the north side. It's a giant theater complex, and it started with a bunch of kids, and that all started when I started acting in high school. Yeah,
that's a great word. So you've been from small theater, of course, major motion pictures. I guess it's been 40 years you've been really supporting the military, and of course you had your role as Lieutenant Dan in Forrest Gump, which has been one of your most impactful roles. Talk about that experience and how that fed into your desire to serve veterans and military.
You know, some of the military work, the genesis and origins of a lot of that comes from my family history. On my side of the family, many veterans. On my wife's side of the family, Vietnam veterans. Back in the 80s, when I was at Steppenwolf, I started. I ended up doing a play that was written by a group of Vietnam veterans. We started supporting local veterans then, and then in the 90s, when I auditioned for Forrest Gump, I played a Vietnam veteran, and that led to supporting many different veterans organizations back in the 90s. And then after September 11th, when we were attacked, I just felt like with the family history and the organizations that I had been supporting prior to that terrible day, I was teed up in a way to just reach out and try to help our active duty folks who were deploying to Afghanistan and Iraq, and volunteered for the USO and just kept going out there, and that all turned into a full-time mission that evolved into the creation of a nonprofit, the Gary Sinise Foundation.
So 9/11 really became a pivot point for you in your journey there, it sounds like?
No question. I wrote a book that came out in 2019. It's called Grateful American, A Journey from Self to Service, and it kind of tracks a lot of that, a lot of the early work that I was doing in theater and movies and all that, but then how that career kind of after September 11th turned into a service mission. And there's a chapter in the book called Turning Point. And really, a turning point for me, I felt like what I had done in the 80s with some Vietnam veterans groups and the 90s with working with our wounded after playing the wounded soldier in Forrest Gump, I was just sort of teed up in a way to do more. And September 11th was a turning point toward a full-time mission of service. And now we've raised, we launched the foundation in 2011. We've raised hundreds of millions of dollars and deployed those resources all over in the military community, veterans community, first responders, children and families of our fallen heroes. We've built homes for our wounded. In fact, just recently, we handed over the keys to a double amputee in Nolensville and built a home there. We're gonna reach 100 specially adapted, smart technology, mortgage-free homes that we've built. Our 100th home will be right around Veterans Day this year.
Yeah, and that's part of your RISE program, and I certainly want to get into that. Before we get to that part, there are a lot of great veterans charities and foundations and organizations out there. So, the 9/11 was kind of a pivot point for you. What inspired you to make your commitment permanent with the Gary Sinise Foundation in 2011?
One of the I mentioned that I had volunteered for the USO after September 11th. I started going out on tours with the USO. I started taking a band on tours with the USO. I started when I really dug in after 9/11 and wanted to help. I started going to the war zones and visiting the hospitals, and I would meet different people that had nonprofit organizations that were trying to help the men and women who were serving our country. And I had been involved with a few prior to September 11th, like the Disabled American Veterans. I got involved with them after I played Lieutenant Dan in Forrest Gump. But then I found that there was a way for me to do a lot more for our defenders and their families than just, visiting the hospital or going on a USO tour or something. I started supporting a lot of these various nonprofits that were popping up, and they were, engaged in supporting like the children of our fallen heroes or, the home building stuff, all these different things and all the different programs that we have now at the Gary Sinise Foundation. The origins of a lot of those programs came from what I was doing before, and I was supporting a lot of different nonprofits out there that are involved with helping our military and our veterans, first responders. And I learned a lot from a lot of these nonprofits and based on the missions. And I would go and fundraise for them. I would do PSAs to create awareness for what they were doing. And whatever I could do to do more to help more people by supporting a lot of different organizations, that's what I was doing. And then when I decided, hey, this is for keeps, I'm really in this. This is something I really am passionate about. I can see the impact that's being made by just showing up and helping. And so then I decided the next step was to create a foundation of my own, to stand up a nonprofit of my own so that I could raise additional funds, create programs. And if you look at the Gary Sinise Foundation, we have a very wide range of things that we're doing. We're not like an organization just does one thing. We do multiple things, and that's because that's what I was doing before I had the foundation. I was, putting my support toward many other activities and organizations that were doing a number of great things to support our defenders. So we have a broad mission at the foundation. And if you want to know more about it, you can go to GarySiniseFoundation.org.
We're visiting with Gary Sinise. We're talking about his foundation, which does wonderful things. And that was one of the things that was eye-opening for me in preparing for this show is all the different things and programs that you do have. So when we come back, he mentioned that the 100th custom-built, specially adapted, mortgage-free smart home that will be coming right after Veterans Day right here in Tennessee. That's the RISE program. When we come back from our break, I want to dive into that and some of the other great things that the Gary Sinise Foundation is doing. So stay with us. This is More Living with Jim Brogan here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI.
Welcome back to News Talk 98.7's Brogan Financial Studios, where Jim Brogan is coming to you live with important news and advice to help you achieve your dream retirement. Get ready to learn and live. Here's your host, Jim Brogan.
Welcome back. This is More Living here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI. We're visiting with Gary Sinise of the Gary Sinise Foundation. You can go to GarySiniseFoundation.org to find out more information about their many, many programs. And you mentioned the 100th custom-built. I guess as of right now, you've done, I think, 96 custom-built homes. Is that right, Gary?
Yeah. Yes, that number starts before. These are all homes that I've been involved in since I started. So the foundation has built, a significant amount, about 70 of those, 96 or so. But that number starts back in 2010 when I did my first home before I had the Gary Sinise Foundation. I was raising money to build a home for the first surviving quadruple amputee. His name is Brendan Morocco from Staten Island, New York. And he lost both his arms and both his legs back in 2009. And I came together. I had done some good work in New York after 9/11, supporting the fire department in New York and whatnot. And I had raised money with a concert to build a memorial in Coney Island back in 2007. And when I was shooting CSI New York, in New York, the commissioner of the fire department came to me and wanted to ask me to get involved in building a house in Staten Island for Brendan, who had lost both his arms and both his legs. And I said, you know what? I saw Brendan in the hospital at Walter Reed about 2 weeks after he arrived there, and I would be honored to do a concert. So I did a concert to raise money to build that home, and that started the home building process. And now, and then when I created the Gary Sinise Foundation, we created our RISE program, which is focused on restoring independence and supporting empowerment. And we do specially adapted smart technology homes that are mortgage-free. We do mobility devices like wheelchairs, Segways, that kind of thing, and specially adapted vehicles. Whatever we can do with our RISE program to create more independence for the wounded service member and also for their families. And now we're approaching, we've done, from the very beginning, we've done 96 of these houses, and by Veterans Day, we'll turn over the keys to our 100th home.
And that 100th home will be right here in Tennessee, is that right?
Yes, it's in Cedar Hill, Tennessee. And this is for one of our wounded named Joe Bowser, a U.S. Army veteran. And I happened to meet Joe almost 20 years ago. He had been blown up on a military base in Iraq that I had actually visited back in 2003. And he was wounded and lost a leg. And I've known him for several years. He never asked for anything. And then he finally, I kept encouraging him, and he finally applied for the program, and we're going to be doing a house for him and his wife.
That's just awesome and awe-inspiring to hear that. that story from 2010 with the first home. You mentioned this foundation does not offer just one type of program, and I'm looking at a flyer here. There's so many different things here. There's Soaring Valor events, Serving Heroes Initiative. You've got a really cool thing with the Marine Corps. Talk a little bit about some of your other programs besides the RISE program and what you're doing to serve both military and first responders.
Yeah, you mentioned Soaring Valor. So Soaring Valor was started. I have a great relationship with the National World War II Museum in New Orleans, which started back in 2009 before I had a foundation or anything like that. I actually was asked by Tom Hanks to do a voice. They have a movie at the National World War II Museum called Beyond All Boundaries. And in the movie, it's about 45 minutes long. It's kind of the history of World War II. And they have a lot of voices, people that are actually reading letters and, from people that actually served during World War II. And Tom asked me, he was working with the World War II Museum on that. And he asked me to do the voice of Ernie Pyle, the journalist, Ernie Pyle, who was killed during the Battle of Okinawa. And Ernie was an incredible writer, did some incredible work documenting what was going on during the war. And I was just honored to do it. And that started a relationship with the National World War II Museum. I started sending my uncle down there, who was a navigator on a B-17 bomber. And they recorded him. They record World War II veterans at the National World War II Museum on video and audio, and they preserve those records, audio and video, in their archive at the museum. And they did one for my uncle. Well, my uncle died in 2014, and I called him up and I said, "Will you send me that video?" And I watched it, and I was very moved by it. And I called him up, and I said, everybody who has a World War II veteran in their family should have a video like this. Can we support, getting more of these videos done? And they said, yeah, you can sponsor historians who will go out with video cameras and document World War II veterans. So we started doing that, and then I said, more World War II veterans should see the National World War II Museum. It's incredible. And so I went to my pals at American Airlines, who I've done a whole bunch of things with going back to 2007, and asked them if they would support with travel for World War II veterans. And then we created our Soaring Valor program, and now we've taken about 1,400 World War II veterans down to the National World War II Museum, and we started that 10 years ago in 2015. And 2017, I wanted to add an educational component to that, so we started pairing up high school students with World War II veterans, and they get to travel with a World War II veteran on a charter airplane all the way down to New Orleans and tour the museum with a World War II veteran. It's a great program. Obviously, it's kind of winding down because we have less and less World War II veterans that are able to travel now. The youngest one is like 98 years old. But we have a trip coming up in just about we have a trip coming up next week, and then another trip in September. And the program will kind of wind down in terms of our charter airplane trips, but we will continue to provide opportunities for World War II veteran families to go to the museum if they can get there, and we will provide, the travel support for them. It's a great, wonderful program. That's just one of the programs, and that came from my uncle. My uncle was the inspiration for wanting to get World War II veterans down to the museum. That's just one of our programs, and we continued to have education programs as part of the Gary Sinise Foundation. It's important for our young people to really understand what service is about, what our military and our veterans do for our country,
Absolutely.
We will continue to do that.
Yeah, you also, through strategic partnerships, you have your mental wellness initiatives. Soldiers, of course, we've learned more and more about all the mental health challenges, including PTSD. And first responders too, and military. Talk a little bit about mental wellness and the need to continue to serve our heroes with some of their mental needs returning from active duty.
Well, yes, there's all kinds of challenges there. There are challenges of post-traumatic stress, people that are dealing with very serious mental health issues because of, what they've seen, what they experienced, the losses of friends, all of that, and people trying to process that. We have a lot of Afghanistan veterans who, after the withdrawal, the kind of messed up withdrawal of Afghanistan that we had, a lot of these Afghanistan veterans were just questioning everything. What did we do for 20 years? And then we gave the country back to the Taliban. And all of that. And you had a lot of people that were, all of a sudden we had a lot of Afghanistan veterans really going through a lot of deep dive, soul searching about that. So we have programs and partnerships with all kinds of organizations that we support that where their focus is really seriously on mental wellness. One of those great programs, a buddy of mine, Ken Falk, started a program. He's a successful businessman. He served in the Navy as an EOD tech, did well in business, and had some land in Bluemont, Virginia, and wanted to build a retreat for veterans who were struggling with various mental health issues or physical disabilities because of their service. And he was building this thing back in 2013, and I met Ken, and I said, I want to come see what you're doing. So I went there when they were about 2 weeks from opening. They were still putting things up and building the cabins and all that. It's a beautiful retreat. And he told me what he wanted to do. And just a little while later, I proposed a plan. I made a proposal to him to team up some of our younger wounded veterans with older wounded veterans from my relationships with the Disabled American Veterans Organization. So we started these retreats where we would send younger Afghan or Iraq veterans to Boulder Crest. It's called Boulder Crest Retreat. And we would pair them up with wounded Vietnam veterans, triple amputees, or people that have lost limbs, and they would go through the retreat program. It's called the Warrior Path program. And over time, that program has just exploded. It's really incredible what it does for service members that are dealing with, serious mental wellness challenges. They want you to get to post-traumatic growth is what it's about. And it's a great program. Boulder Crest Foundation, Boulder Crest Retreat, and we have a great partnership with them where we will support. We provide a lot of funding. We provide, we send service members to the retreat, and now they have multiple retreats around the country that they've opened over time. So this is if you're a veteran out there and you're struggling, and you're in search of some support, please go to GarySiniseFoundation.org. Look at our relief and resiliency efforts, and you'll learn a lot more about some of the programs that we offer and that we support to help people through. We want people, remember the story of Lieutenant Dan? He's struggling, he's mad, he's angry, he's going through a lot of difficult stuff, but in the end, it's a happy ending. Lieutenant Dan is standing up in the end. He's walking, he's moving on, he's moved beyond the war years. He's processed those and moved beyond them. And that's the story that we want for everybody. So
Absolutely.
I encourage you to look at that, look at the Gary Sinise Foundation programs.
Yeah, the mental wellness initiatives, I think that's such a fundamentally important thing, dealing with some of the really the brain stress of what people deal with when they come back. I think we all know, either family members or friends who have returned from active duty, that see anywhere from mild to very severe post-traumatic stress. I love what you said there about really being able to thrive and eventually overcome that and continue to live the way that they want to. Tell you what, we're going to get to our next break. When we come back, I want to talk about the impact of music on Gary's life. Many of us may not have realized that he's so involved, and you have the Lieutenant Dan Band that performs quite a bit. So we'll get a little bit into your music background when we come back. This is More Living with Jim Brogan here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI.
Welcome back to News Talk 98.7's Brogan Financial Studios, where Jim Brogan is coming to you live with important news and advice to help you achieve your dream retirement. Get ready to learn and live. Here's your host, Jim Brogan.
This is More Living with Jim Brogan, where it's all about living the best years of your life your way. This is News Talk 98.7 WOKI. We're with you every Saturday, 9 to 10 a.m., and again from 3 to 4 p.m. You can also check us out online. Go to broganfinancial.com. You can click on radio and download and stream our shows. You can also podcast them on Apple Podcast and Spotify. We wouldn't have the freedoms we do without our military, without our veterans. Our military and our first responders put their lives on the line, ultimately are willing to pay the ultimate sacrifice to keep us safe, to protect our freedoms. Could be really, there's almost no greater cause than supporting those that we're willing to serve, are willing to serve our country. We're visiting with Gary Sinise of the GarySiniseFoundation.org. Many of us know him from his role as Lieutenant Dan. He also was on Forrest Gump. He was also on CSI New York. The Gary Sinise Foundation, GarySiniseFoundation.org, was started in 2011. And Gary, you moved the foundation from California to Nashville. Talk a little bit about what prompted you to move to Tennessee.
It's the volunteer state.
Sure is. Have you become a Tennessee fan since you moved here? Are you a Tennessee Vol?
Absolutely. You bet. I'm a big fan of Tennessee. I began coming in. The first time I came was back in the 80s. I was actually working on a screenplay, writing a screenplay with a playwright friend of mine, and we were traveling around, and we came here. A buddy of mine, actor Albert Finney, I don't know if you remember Albert, but Albert was doing a movie here in the Nashville area. I spent some time here. I went to the Opry, did a bunch of things, fell in love with it. Then over the years, as I started doing more with the military, I would go to Fort Campbell and spend time with the 160th Aviation Regiment, the Night Stalkers. Played concerts out at Fort Campbell. Have friends here in the music business, and as time went on, I started thinking, well, maybe I don't want to continue to live in California. I was in California for many, many years, did well there with the movie business and all that. Started looking at some different no state tax states.
Sure.
And having come here to the Nashville area and having friends here and everything, I just started zeroing in on it. And the thing that sealed the deal for me was when I asked my daughter. I said, and she was living about 10 minutes from us in California, and she has three little girls. And I said, if I was thinking of moving to Tennessee, would you consider moving? We weren't going to leave if the grandkids were going to stay there.
I'm sure.
When my daughter said yes, and she started looking for houses and everything like that, that sealed the deal. And I moved my foundation from Woodland Hills, California, to Franklin in, it was 2021. And then our family eventually moved in 2023, and we're loving it here.
Yeah, Tennessee is a great place. We're great geography. We've got people moving from all over the country to Tennessee, and of course it's fiscally responsible as a state, and then of course no income tax, very very tax efficient. with everything that we do here. Let's talk about music, Gary. Many people may not have been aware of your music background, and you do have something coming up. We're celebrating on September 2nd, 80 years since the end of World War II, and you and the Lieutenant Dan Band are performing in Hawaii to commemorate the end of World War II at the end of August. I'm sure that's going to be just an amazing experience. What inspired you to have the Lieutenant Dan Band be such an integral part of your foundation?
Well, I started doing the band well over 20 years ago, so well before I had my foundation. It was just another way of supporting. I did my first USO tour right after we went into Iraq. We went into Iraq in March of 2003. And in June of 2003, the USO and a bunch of other sponsors, including Northwest Airlines, who provided a 747, they put together a giant tour to Iraq with all these entertainers, football players, basketball players, comedians, singers, actors. I mean, there were a bunch of us on that trip, of about 180 people on a 747, and they called it Project Salute. And I got on the trip as Lieutenant Dan, going over to visit the troops, and I did that. And Kid Rock was on that trip, and Leanne Womack, some really good people were performing. They did, we did a lot of visiting, going out, visiting the troops, shaking hands, taking pictures, that kind of thing. But there were 3 or 4 performances during that time. I would get up and just talk to the crowd for 5 minutes and wave. Kid Rock would rock out, and Leanne would sing, and all of that. It was a great tour, and I wanted to do that some more. So I came home from that tour in June of 2003 and said, send me out again. And I just kept going out on these USO tours. And I had some musicians that I played with for fun. It was just like, one of those jamming things. You'd get together every once in a while and play some music. I played as a kid in high school and everything, and it was something I just did for fun. But I talked the USO into letting me take the musician pals of mine on a tour. And we did that. In February of 2004, we went to Diego Garcia, we went to Singapore and Korea. And that was our first band tour. At that time, I did not have CSI New York. And, I'd done some movies, but I wasn't really that well known, but everybody knew who Lieutenant Dan was. So I just named the band, Gary Sinise and the Lieutenant Dan Band, so people would know who it is. And since then we played hundreds of shows. In fact, that show that you mentioned, in Hawaii for the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II, that will be our 600th show.
Wow.
In the last, 20 years. These are all free shows. I have to pay the band. I've had to pay the band, from the beginning and figure out how to put the stage up and pay for the lights and the sound and everything like that. But I play for free. So this is 600 something shows, for the mission of supporting and uplifting and raising morale and, raising spirits. We're raising funds. We've done with the band, and the band is a program of the Gary Sinise Foundation. So if you donate to the Gary Sinise Foundation, one of the things we do is provide entertainment, and that the American people help me go around and show our support and appreciation and gratitude for those who are serving. We play concerts for first responder organizations. We'll do, benefits and fundraisers and all of that. In fact, we have a pretty big event coming up here in Nashville. Back in 2014, I did an event in Hollywood called Hollywood Salutes Heroes, and my foundation brought in probably 50 wounded heroes from Walter Reed and Brooke Army Medical Center, some of the different hospitals, and we treated them to to right around the 20th anniversary of Forrest Gump coming out. That happened to be. We treated them to a Hollywood event where we called it Hollywood Salutes Heroes. And now that we're here in Nashville, I wanted to do the same thing here, and we're doing Nashville Salutes Heroes. It'll start on September 5th. There'll be all kinds of things for the heroes to do, the service members, the defenders. And one of those things, my band's going to play at the Nashville Speedway on September 6th. So we're going to be doing a lot of great things, and the finale will be at the Country Music Hall of Fame in Nashville. And Big and Rich are going to play at that one.
That's great. I guess people can find out more about that at your website at GarySiniseFoundation.org. On the Nashville Salutes, what's the best way to find out about Nashville Salutes? Because that's just, 2.5 hours from here.
Yeah, you can. I mean, if you go to LieutenantDanBand.com, you can look at the band website. But there's all kind of, like the Nashville Salutes concert at the Speedway is that starts about 2 in the afternoon, I think, at the Speedway. There's a lot of stuff with the cars, and the wounded folks are going to get to spend time with the cars at the Speedway and everything. And then my band's going to play probably around 4 o'clock.
We're visiting with Gary Sinise, GarySiniseFoundation.org. When we come back, we're talking about music. Also, his family has been an integral part of the foundation and his life. And I want to talk a little bit about that when we come back. This is More Living with Jim Brogan here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI.
Welcome back to News Talk 98.7's Brogan Financial Studios, where Jim Brogan is coming to you live with important news and advice to help you achieve your dream retirement. Get ready to learn and live. Here's your host, Jim Brogan.
Thanks for listening this week to More Living here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI. We're visiting with Gary Sinise, legendary actor. Most of us know him as Lieutenant Dan from Forrest Gump. We're talking about his incredible foundation, GarySiniseFoundation.org. As we found out more and more about that foundation in the last year or so, we really, really wanted to get Gary on to talk about his foundation. And it's interesting, I was talking about, I really want to encourage our listeners to check y'all out now that you're in Nashville. I mean, it's 2.5 hours away. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to be heading over there this afternoon because my daughter is a rising sophomore at Belmont University, and we're going to be moving her in for her sophomore year. She is on the cheer squad over there. I know family's a huge part of your life, Gary, and the foundation, and they really do go hand in hand. I know your son, Mac, worked at the foundation helping in education and outreach. Sadly, I know he lost his battle with a very rare form of cancer. I'm so sorry for that loss. Talk a little bit about Mac and his impact on the foundation.
Well, thank you for asking. We lost our son January 5th, 2024, to a very rare cancer that he'd been fighting for about 5.5, 6 years. The cancer is called chordoma. And, when I first heard he had that, I mean, I'd never heard of it before. And many people haven't, even doctors. It's so rare that only about 300 people in the U.S. are diagnosed with this per year. Like other cancers, sometimes about 70% of the time they can go in, they can get the initial tumor and remove it, and it's cured. It doesn't come back. Unfortunately, Mac was in the 30% of people that it comes back, it recurs, and it starts to spread. And, when you have a cancer that less than 100 people are dealing with every year, of course, there are no pharmaceutical companies that are developing drugs to fight a cancer that only 100 people are dealing with. So you're subject to just whatever is available out there on the cancer drug market, and you try different drugs. Fortunately, for us, there's an organization that was started by somebody who had chordoma when he was a kid, and he survived it. The tumor was removed, and he survived, but he was concerned it was going to come back, and so he started a foundation called the Chordoma Foundation to develop research and pull experts together. And they were very, very helpful during our fight. But Mac continued to struggle as the cancer disabled him more and more as time went on. He was an incredible musician and composer.
He was a drummer,
drums.
Right? Went to USC
from the time he was 9 years old.
Yeah, and then, you all have been surrounded by musicians, so many of the people you know and musicians help him finish an entire album of music, right, entitled Resurrection and Revival. What was that process like, working on that album with him?
Well, that was incredible. Because the cancer had disabled him so much, he wasn't really focusing on music. He was just fighting cancer for the longest time. Couldn't play drums anymore. But, the last year of his life, we didn't, of course, know that was going to be his final year. But early that year, 2023, he said, he told me, he said, "Dad, there's a piece of music I wrote in college. I never finished it. I've been thinking about it, and I think I'd like to finish it." And he asked me if I thought a couple of my band members would help him work on it. He got together with them. They started working on it. Then out of the blue, this buddy of his from college, who's a fellow composer, called him up. Didn't really know that Mac had been, struggling so much with cancer. He came over to the house. They started talking. Mac played him the things he'd been working on, and they went to work to finish it. And this was a piece that Mac was working on called Arctic Circles, and it is on his YouTube channel, Mac Sinise YouTube. There's a bunch of videos of this music. They finished Arctic Circles. They went into the studio in July of 23. They recorded it with an orchestra. And then that led to Mac wanting to do a whole record. And we moved, as I said, in 2023 to Nashville from California. That first session for Arctic Circles was in California. And then we knew we were going to move. So we moved here about September 29th, and by November, they were in the studio doing more music here in Nashville. And Mac created a record called Resurrection and Revival, Mac Sinise, Resurrection and Revival. And he heard all the music. He designed the album cover. He wanted to have vinyl records so he could give to people. It's downloadable, too. You can download it on iTunes and Amazon and all the Spotify, all these things. And after he died, I started pouring through his laptop and everything, and I started finding all this other music that he had written and tucked away. So I went to work with his composer buddy, Oliver Schnee, who worked with him on the first record, and we created Resurrection and Revival Part 2. So both those records are downloadable, but you can also buy the vinyls at GarySiniseFoundation.org. And Mac, he said, "Dad, I think I'd like to make 100 vinyls, and we'll give them to people. And if we ever sold any, the proceeds could go to the Gary Sinise Foundation." Mac loved the Gary Sinise Foundation. He was a great staff member. He'd be one of our young leaders now for sure if he hadn't had to battle cancer. And now we have 2 records out there. The proceeds are going to the Gary Sinise Foundation. And
Matt, we've got that, and that's the music we're playing right now as you speak that we've kind of brought up. That is from his album, Resurrection and Revival.
What are you playing? I can't hear it.
Oh, you can't hear the music? We've been rolling that for about the last couple of minutes. That's Arctic Circles? Yeah, we're playing Arctic Circles. Our audience can hear it. I'm so sorry that you can't hear it. So that's again, Mac Sinise, and the title of his album is Resurrection and Revival, and then you did a second part, and people can download that on your Apple, wherever you want to download that. Gary, I guess people can find out more. I hate we're out of time. GarySiniseFoundation.org. Thank you so much for being with us this Saturday morning. Just an incredible foundation. Check him out. Also, check out his YouTube channel with Gary Sinise Foundation, because they've got some great stuff you can see there, all the impact they're making. Gary, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me. Have a great day.
Yes, sir, you too. That's Gary Sinise, GarySiniseFoundation.org. Also, you can check out his son's music at Mac. It's Mac Sinise, and then you can download his records, Resurrection and Revival. Today we've talked about our freedoms, because greater freedom provides for more living so you can live the best years of your life your way. Have a great weekend. Thanks for tuning in. This is More Living with Jim Brogan on News Talk 98.7 WOKI.
The views expressed by Jim Brogan and his guests are not that of Cumulus Media. Any discussion of financial, legal, and tax planning strategies is not intended to be individualized advice and is general in nature. Always consult with your advisor for advice specific to your needs. This program's content does not represent a recommendation of any particular security, strategy, or investment by Jim Brogan or Brogan Financial Incorporated.